Hi everybody, welcome back to DayZ, and that's right, you are believing your eyes. Here we have a Sakhal style locked military container that's washed up on the coast of Chernarus. Actually this one's open, so I just opened it. But if we go inside, what we can find is some really nice loot, weapons loot, which is based on the contaminated area loot of Chernarus, so it should be pretty good. So what I've done is I've knocked together some files and some code snippets that when you install them on your PlayStation or PC or Xbox community server, what you'll get is, just like Sakhal, is you'll get these containers that spawn in and around the coast, all the way around the south and the east coast, and the keys will spawn up in sort of tier 4 Tisy sort of military area up here in the northwest. So they're all pretty rare. I'm going to go through the files and kind of show you how they work. And it is a dynamic event as well in terms of the containers. So they'll spawn in at different locations. I've put them on like the islands in and around the present island here and around Sakhal-like Island here as well. So they're quite tricky to find. I think using my vanilla files, you have to be pretty dedicated to try and hoover up all of the weapons in it. So anyway, let's go through it. Now, in the description below this video, you'll find a link to my GitHub, and as a backup, a link up to my Mega. So if you're familiar with installing files, by all means nip over there and crack on. The readme in both locations contains the instructions on how to install these files as well, and it's fairly straightforward if you're familiar with this sort of thing. But what I will do in a second, I will go through the basic installation process for the people who are a little bit new at this. Now, one thing I will say is that we are using the cfg economy core method. So these events and these type files you see here are additions that we're going to put in. They're not just inserts of events and types, but I'll show you that in a second. So if you think, yes, this is something I would like on my Chernarus community server for Xbox, PlayStation or PC, nip over to the GitHub repository and you want to go to the code button and download this zip. Now when you've downloaded it and unzipped it, copy and paste it somewhere else on your computer, and you'll end up with this file, or these files here, the Millicon events, Millicon types, and you get the readme, and also you get the churn locked containers.dze file. Now this is a DayZ editor file that you can load up in the DayZ editor PC mod locally, and that has all of the locations of the containers. So if you know what you're doing, you could add some more or take some away or move them around, and then re-export it as an event, and then you can take those coordinates that are in that that events file that the DayZ editor creates. You can pull them out, and then you can use them for the events on this as well, should you wish to customize it as well. So then what you want to do is you want to just open up the readme file and open up the other files as well, the Millicon events and the Millicon types, and have a read through. So there's the usual warning at the top. I have tested this on a PC local server, and I've done quite a bit of testing on a remote Xbox server, so everything seems to be working okay. And then scroll down and you have the instructions on how to install the files. Now the first thing is, if you're on console and you go to your Nitrado server and you go inside the mission folder for your Chernarus server, you'll find a custom folder, and that's where we have to put in any files that have file names different to what the vanilla files are. So for example, with types, we can create a edited typpes.xml and we can upload it over the top of the existing typpes.xml, and the console server will read that fine. However, say we had another file called types2 that we wanted to use, we have to put that inside the custom folder, otherwise the server will just ignore it. It's told to ignore anything outside of the custom folder that doesn't have a vanilla name. Now on PC you don't have to do that, but what I would recommend is do create a custom folder, because it enables you to have one place where you put all your custom files. Kind of keeps things a little bit tidier as well. So into that custom folder you'll want to upload the 1C128 Millicon types and the 1C128 Millicon events. So you'll end up with something like this. So this is my local PC server, and although we're looking at it using the Windows Explorer, window file explorer, it kind of is similar remotely as well. So if we go up, for example, when you go into it, you'll see MP missions on PC, XB missions on Xbox, PS missions on PlayStation, and you go into it and you'll see probably just DayZ offline.chernarus plus, and you go into that, and then you go into the custom folder, and as you can see, I've got the 1C Millicon types and the 128 Millicon events. So they're there. So next thing we need to open up is the cfgeconomycore file, because what that does is this enables us to add a little bit at the bottom, which you can copy and paste from the readme, that tells the server, look, I want you to look into the custom folder, and I want you to look at the Millicon types and the Millicon events. And what I want you to do is either override any vanilla references to the things that are in these files, or add these bits on to your consideration when you're doing the central economy. So if we look into the types, for example, what we can see is we've got the references for the shipping container keys, the 4 different colors. And in these vanilla settings, it's 2. So you should get 2 up in the northwest around Tisy. You can change this. And then underneath that, then we've got the references to the containers. Now these are set at 0 because these are spawned in by the event, not spawned in by the central economy typpes.xml. So make sure they stay at 0. But unless we have these, they'll despawn, and we don't want that. One of the things you could do actually to make the keys harder to find would be to keep the nominal the same, but add another tier. So have them in tier 3 and tier 4. That would spread them out even further across the map. Or obviously you could reduce it to 1. Then in the event, this is the static container locked event. So the nominal is 10, minimum of 8. So that sounds like a lot, but it's not. The coast of Chernarus is pretty big. And then you can see these. So maybe you'll have to play around with this if you find that people on your server complain that, oh right, we found the keys, but we can never find any containers. Maybe you'll have to increase that a little bit. So you get those into place. Open up your CFG Economy Core, copy and paste that bit there into CFG Economy Core below your defaults, so it ends up there. Or if you already have some references to some custom CE files, then you can just copy and paste that bit there and add them on. Then if we scroll down, we can see we now need to add this entry here to our mapgroupproto. So if we go back to our server and we open up mapgroupproto, mapgroupproto is a really clever file, and what it does is it tells your server when it is looking at a building or a thing or an object that spawns loot, like a house or a crashed vehicle or a container. It tells the server what sort of loot should spawn in it and what coordinates within that thing, with that house or that container, where should the loot actually be. So we can see that land container locked blue dynamic event should spawn in military and contaminated area loot that are weapons, and it should spawn them in at these random locations within the container. So nice and easy. Again, you could get rid of contaminated area if you wanted to. The problem with doing that though is that military tier 1 or military coast loot might be a bit pants. It might be just things like shotguns, single fire shotguns, and the odd, well, that's about it really, pistols and stuff. So you might be a bit disappointed if you go all the way to Tisy, find a key, fight your way back to the coast, and you just end up with a single barrel shotgun. Not sure if that would be good, but contaminated area, you get all the juicy stuff, which is pretty cool. So what you want to do is copy and paste those sections there from the opening group to the closing group section into your mapgroupproto, save that and upload it. And if we scroll down a little bit further, we can find we have the entry for the cfg event spawns file. So if we go back to our server and open up cfg event spawns, if I can find it, there it is. Then at the top, press enter underneath event posdef a few times. As you see, I've already done it, but this will spawn in all the coordinates for the X, Y, and Zs. So the horizontal, the vertical, and the altitude, the height of the container, along with the angle. What you'll notice is there's no roll, pitch, and yaw. So you can't angle the containers so that they would sit nicely. But what I have found is that it does appear that even if with lots of the containers the underlying ground kind of does come into the container, the loot is kind of sitting on the surface. There might be some stuff underneath, but it doesn't seem to be a problem at all the containers I've looked at. So what you would do is you copy and paste all of these into your CFG event spawns at the top, save that, re-upload it. And once you've done those things, what you may want to do is go to xmlvalidation.com and just validate your files, the ones that you've edited. So validate your mapgroupproto and validate your CFG event spawns. Nothing's wrong with validating the extra events and extra types files, or just to make sure there's no errors, because I'm known to make some errors. And once you've done all that, make sure you've saved the files, make sure you've uploaded them, and then restart the server, and then the containers should start spawning in pretty quickly, and the keys as well. They should be there. And as I say, depending on what other changes you've done to the loot economy, you will get some good stuff spawning in. You may have to adjust the amount of loot that is spawning in as contaminated area loot, because obviously what we're doing here is we're kind of adding more spawn points for the contaminated area loot, the stuff that would normally spawn in at the gas zone where at Riffy, and the one at, is it military base Pavlovo? So we're kind of spreading that stuff out, but there aren't that many containers, so hopefully it won't make too much of a difference, but you kind of have to see for yourself. So there we go. So all the relevant links are in the description below this video. If you do use these files and you think they're worth doing, and you've enjoyed using them, and the people on your servers enjoying using them, please let me know. It's always good to hear this sort of thing. If there's any errors, please let me know as well, because I'm well known for making mistakes in my files, even though I check them lots of times. And also, if you've got some ideas for things, you think, oh, that's good, Rob, but how about if you did this, but I'm not quite sure how to do it, could you have a think about it? That's great, because that gives me ideas for content. And any questions you have as well, please let me know, because questions are what this channel is built on. So you ask the questions. If I know, I'll make a video straight away. If I have to think about it, I'll have a think about it and do some research, and that's the question there. And even though I might not answer questions straight away, I know sometimes people leave comments on the channel again. Oh, I've asked, I'm sure you don't use this voice, but you say, I've asked you lots of questions and you don't answer. Often the answer to those questions are going into a to-do list, because what I like to do is, if I look at a question and think, that's an interesting question, I'm sure lots of other people could benefit from me making a video tutorial answering that question rather than putting the answer in a comment. Then that's what I do. Anyway, thank you to everybody for their support. If you've enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And of course, I'll see you again soon.